Happy Julian calendar New Year, everybody. As a lot of people know, the real New Year, if you want to look at it that way, is actually March 20th on the spring equinox. But I've been thinking about that because that's actually the beginning of the fall into winter for the southern half of our world. And that's more of a Eurocentric view of time, if you think of it that way. So, in a way, I think the new year is a subjective thing altogether. Because when those of us in the northern half of the world are enjoying spring into summer, the other half of the world is beginning their winter. So, what really is New Year? Okay? In the Matrix, we know the New Year as January 1st of supposedly 2026, but even that's subjective because who knows what year it really is. For the Chinese, it's a completely different year. But, that being said, in the Western world of the Matrix, January 1st is a time of year when everybody tries to renew their life. They look at it as a new beginning, and a lot of people make resolutions to change in the new year. And last year, on January 1st of 2025, I decided to write a blog article about resolutions because it had dawned on me that everybody's making these resolutions every year and they're only focusing on one, two, or maybe three or more aspects of their life, when I came to the understanding a long time ago that if we just focus on one thing, it will cover all areas of our life. And so that's why I wrote this blog. And what I'm going to do this year, because unfortunately, as you can see, last year it only got 4 likes and 2 comments. I'm going to make a video about it, and I'm just actually going to read it, and hopefully it gets a wider audience when I put it on YouTube, Facebook, Substack, in video form. And hopefully more people get this message, because this really is the message that, based on my 18, almost 19 years of research now, I've come to the understanding that alignment with natural law is really the only key to solving all the problems in the world. And I've tested this over and over. And so I'm just going to go ahead and read this, go right through the article. That way you can just sit back and listen. You don't have to take the time to read it, but the information will be out there in a new format. So the name of the article was "The Last New Year's Resolution You'll Ever Have to Make: Accepting the Universal Truths That Could Change Everything." Okay, that time of the year has come once again when millions will make personal commitments to change or improve their lives. But for most, these new commitments will fail in the end, and rather quickly as well. Yes, Quitter's Day is a real thing, and a recent survey has revealed that as many as 80% give up on their promises to themselves by just the second Friday in January. Changing habits, it seems, is much harder than just resolving to do so. It requires something much deeper than just a thought or uninspired ambition. It requires integrity. It requires real desire to actually change. And that, it seems, is where most people falter, because resorting to old patterns and taking the path of least resistance is simply easier for most. This is why the status quo remains in not only individual lives, but overall society in general. But is it solely the individual at fault, or is there something much deeper at play here? I've known for years that the trifecta of societal decay is ignorance, arrogance, and apathy. But what is actually causing so many individuals to default to those character traits? Is it simply the ego mind controlling the consciousness of so many in our world? Or is it the system itself that is creating such an absurd world of insanity and perpetual chaos while offering nothing more than illogical explanations passing as the official narrative for every major paradigm-shifting event or psyop related to government and corporations, and then propagated by a controlled and weaponized media machine to convince the public that this is their true reality? I mean, they would never lie, would they? Is the failure in so many to give up on their resolutions due to an innate feeling that no matter what we do, any personal improvement isn't going to change the system that is ultimately creating this feeling of futility? Why bother then, right? I mean, in many ways, it doesn't matter how much we try individually. The system is designed to deceive us, to abuse us, to gaslight us, to harvest our energy and wealth, and to keep us divided into boxes from which most will never break free to realize that the system is the problem. Impulsively choosing to cast blame and point fingers at others rather than the manufactured social construct itself. So they attempt to engage in personal change only to realize that it's just too hard to maintain in a world created to reward mediocrity and suppress individual growth, and they ultimately reverse back to their comfortable old normal. After all that I've researched and observed over the past nearly 18 years now, and understanding just how the system is designed to keep the majority in place and never question the nature of their reality, I know that nothing will improve until enough people finally commit to not only changing the system, but eradicating it from existence. Never allowing any institutions resembling anything close to what we have now to do the immense harm they've done to humanity and our world for centuries, ever again. And there is simply one ideology behind which we all can and should unite. Puppy dreams. And there is simply one ideology behind which we all can and should unite if we ever hope to dissolve this system and reclaim the power and individual freedom we're meant to have. And that ideology is the one New Year's resolution we should all commit to learning, understanding, and applying to our lives. Because this one ideology is common to all living beings in our world. This one common ideology, or better yet, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent universal force, is in effect for all of our lives, from the moment we're born until the moment we move on from this realm of reality. It's the one ideology that, if fully understood and embraced by enough people, would completely change our world, because once we align with it and begin to practice the simple moral maxims which define it, the world would have no choice but to change for the benefit of everyone. And if you followed me in my work for any amount of time, you will know full well what this ideology is. It's simply natural law. It's the ideology I first came across in my research and work nearly 14 years ago. At the time, I had been focusing my research on the education system, reading the works of Charlotte Iserbyt, John Taylor Gatto, and many others. But it was a great podcast by Brett Veinotte called School Sucks that really got me onto delving deeper into the solutions about how to reclaim the full capacity of a mind that had been hijacked by the system since birth. This applies to everyone who has been given a compulsory government education. From there, I discovered Jan Irvin's Gnostic Media podcast and began learning about the Trivium, which has allowed me to develop a highly critical thinking mind and see through the deception by which the vast majority are still so easily fooled. During this profoundly life-altering period of my life, roughly 2009 through 2014, I've been listening to many podcasts that all synergistically enhanced one another. I would get little bits of information from each one that would give me one more piece of the puzzle and ultimately understanding not only the big picture, but in formulating the ideas that could ultimately bring this absurd social structure to its timely and necessary end, if humanity ever hopes to be truly free and has the will to reclaim their power. I'd also been listening to hours upon hours of the Peace Revolution podcast from Richard Grove, as well as What on Earth is Happening from Mark Passio. And it was during this time period of my life that I was first introduced to the ideology of natural law. I'm not sure exactly which podcast in particular first introduced me to the idea, but it was Richard Grove who diligently and meticulously edited the nearly 9-hour natural law seminar given by Mark Passio in October of 2013 for the entire world to see on YouTube that had the greatest impact on my real education. It was after watching this entire presentation when I came to the realization that embracing and applying this ideology was the solution to all of the world's problems. So I refocused all of the work I'd been doing on exposing the problems in my Great Awakening book trilogy and shifted the focus to how do we actually fix them, building off of all this knowledge I had acquired the previous 4 years. Because it's one thing to tell people how bad things really are in this world, but if you don't have a viable solution for them, they have proven over and over that they'd rather not know and keep their heads firmly buried in the sand. And sadly, even if you have a better idea, most will choose to stick with their programmed perception of reality rather than to have to unlearn all they have accepted as truth their entire lives. This is why the world is and remains in the perpetual state of chaos it is and has been for generations. But after learning all that I learned about critical thinking and natural law, I began to apply it to all areas of my life. Everything I did from a perspective of natural law. I thought critically about the positive benefits or negative consequences of every action I would take, and then decide if it was worth it or not. Because natural law is the perfect guide for making every decision with which we could ever be presented. Truth is black and white. There is no gray area when it comes to objectivity. There is only gray in subjective opinion, but not objective truth. And natural law defines all objective truth, whether known or unknown to mankind. I have tested this hypothesis over and over for more than a decade now, and it never fails. For every problem that I see in our world, and for every individual problem as well, there is at its root a simple violation of natural law. For every bad thing that happens, at least one of the 4 and possibly more moral maxims of natural law has been violated. And so the solution immediately becomes self-evident. This is the undeniable power and effectiveness of learning and applying this ideology to all aspects of life and social interaction. And this is why I say that committing to learning about natural law and critical thinking is the last New Year's resolution anyone would ever have to make. Because once someone knows, internalizes, and begins to live with this ideology as their driving force, they are embodied with a spirit of Kaizen and constantly looking to improve anything which they see as out of alignment with natural law. Thus, the annual, mostly futile attempts of resolving to change becomes unnecessary. Because once an individual learns and begins to live this way, everything changes. Not all at once, but gradually. That is how powerful this ideology and omnipotent force truly is. Because whether we want to believe it or not, it's also omniscient and omnipresent. If one escapes it temporarily, it will eventually catch up. We can violate natural law all we want, but we cannot escape the eventual consequences of doing so. Thus, this can be applied to any and every problem in your life, and it can be done so throughout the year, incrementally. You can start with small annoyances first, and once you have conquered those, you can move on to bigger issues with the confidence that applying this simple ideology will solve the next one as well. And again, this is why I've chosen to specifically name my Substack blog and YouTube channel Kaizen and the Pursuit of Truth. Because all of my work is focused on actually fixing our world and creating a better human condition for everyone. So, by teaching these principles, everyone can learn and share them with others. This is the grassroots revolution which will restore sanity in our world in a way that nothing else will succeed at doing in such an effective and efficient manner. Because it's simple. All of what anyone needs to begin to learn, understand, and apply to commit to this one final New Year's resolution can be found in the foundational video series on my YouTube channel. It begins with understanding Kaizen and teaching the basic fundamentals of natural law. Moves on to an explanation of why the majority in our world are so painfully ignorant because of the lost tools of learning, to understanding the etymological roots of what it means to be a true classical liberal, and concludes with a crash course in critical thinking. It is the essence of what was to be published in Volume 1 of my never-completed Great Awakening trilogy, which focused on reclaiming the mind and fixing the broken social order. The second book of the trilogy was going to cover achieving optimal health, and while that book was obviously never published either, the 4-part video series covering the most important information from that research is finally complete, and I will be releasing this coming week. beginning on Monday, January 6, 2025. Like everything else I talk about, it too focuses on the natural law principles of not only creating a state of optimal health in one's life, but maintaining it for the rest of your life. Because again, by applying the simple maxims of natural law to any area of our life, we will find the balance that we are seeking. The reason being, natural law is a self-correcting mechanism. Every misstep becomes obvious to everyone who understands that natural law is in effect, and the change is simple once we commit to avoiding the negative consequences any longer. And this same ideology can be applied to how our entire society and civilization is run as well. I personally never adopted this ideology as a New Year's resolution, but I steadily applied it to everything in not only my life, but have been able to look at all of civilization through this lens of complete clarity. And it's made a significant difference in my life. As I was compiling the images for the slideshows for my Optimal Health video series over the past few months, I came to the realization that I have the exact same body at 57 that I had at 21 years old. And it's only because of my understanding and alignment with this omnipotent power of natural law. Knowing firsthand just how profound a change it's had on my life, I know just how profound an impact it can have on everyone. So if you're looking for that one thing that can have the greatest return on investment of your time to jumpstart a change in your life that will finally stick for the rest of your life, learning and incrementally applying the ideology of natural law is the last resolution you'll ever have to make. Everything else will begin to fall into place from that point on. And once enough people come to this understanding, the world will finally change for the better. And that was my blog from last year. And hopefully many more people will see it and begin to resonate with these messages, because it really is that simple. I keep talking about simplicity in all my work because the world has become so complex that people just default to outsourcing their thinking and problem solving to experts and authorities because they have been told their entire lives that they're not smart enough to figure out the solution themselves. And that's how we've gotten into this problem that we're in today, is people not thinking for themselves. And so over the last almost 6 years now, since the kickoff of the worldwide PSYOP known as COVID-19, I finally realized I have to take all of this knowledge that I've been acquiring for this book trilogy that I know I'm never going to finish now, and start putting it into useful information in video form and blogs and Facebook posts. And that's what I've done for the last 6 years. And sadly, I've been mostly ignored. I don't know why people don't resonate with this message, because it's a very powerful message, and it's the one message that can and will change the world. In fact, it's the only thing. Because any solution that's offered out there that doesn't fully align with natural law is ultimately going to fail in the end. Sure, some people may benefit from it at the very top of the hierarchy or the pyramid, but if it doesn't benefit everybody, if it's not a win-win situation for everybody, it's not worth engaging in or implementing at all. So all of my work is targeted towards being a win-win situation for every living being in this world. And I don't know why people don't want to look at something like that, but all of the information is out there. So if you want, I mentioned the foundational video series in this blog. It's right here on my YouTube channel, Kaizen and the Pursuit of Truth. We've got all 5 parts right there, and then the introduction to the channel at the top. And this is what I'm calling my Reclaiming the Mind course. It's essentially a free course that I've created so everybody can learn the tools that it takes to reclaim the full capacity of their mind. Restoring health is also important in reclaiming our power. And that's why I've created this Optimal Health video series. And again, coming from someone who has rejected the medical industrial complex, big pharma, hasn't been to a doctor since 1998, and is living in optimal health at 58 with no pharmaceuticals, no ailments whatsoever. This is all the information that I've learned over the last 40 years of my life, and I'm sharing it with the world so that you too can understand the basic fundamentals of nutrition and how the body works and what you need to do to create a diet that's perfect for you and your lifestyle. And it's all here in this 4-part Optimal Health video series. And then I've got my Restoring Individual Sovereignty course, if you want to call it that, which is my presentation from the Freedom Under Natural Law conference last year. And it's just 2 parts: the true nature of our cage and the key to unlock the cage. Most people have no idea that the world is operated on a system of positive law. And positive law is simply law that's made up by people in power to control people not in power. Natural law is not positive law. Natural law is the law that is given to us by our Creator, by which we all must abide, or else we will suffer consequences. So if we abide by natural law, we reap the benefits. If we violate natural law, we suffer consequences. So shouldn't we align our society with natural law and reject this idea of man-made positive law that's been controlling and extracting the wealth of humanity for generations, millennia now? It's time for humanity to awaken and ascend and evolve, to ascend in consciousness, to raise their vibe, everyone talks about it, but nobody actually gives you actual steps and tools to how we get there. And that's what all my work is about. And it's all under this umbrella of Living Well Under Natural Law, which is the name of my company, Living Well VNL LLC. This is my website. First thing it says is truth is all that matters, because truth is natural law. And if you're not aligned with natural law, again, you're going to suffer a negative consequence. So this is my website. I've got a store in here, all the products that I use that have helped me to get to 58 years old with absolutely zero health problems, in peak health and peak fitness, avoiding the system. So everything's on there. My free courses are right there. My most popular blogs, all the links to my social media video channels, and the Freedom Project 2020 website. I talk about natural law, the definitions, and then there's 4 sections on health, fitness, growth, and wealth. And one of the final keys to all of my work, in fact, it is the final piece to my work, is I'm working on, will be released hopefully within the next month or so, and that is an economic model that fully aligns with natural law that we would implement into the Natural Law Republic, that would essentially enable every single person to keep 100% of their income and earn 100% of the value that they contribute to that product or service. And profits would be kept. I don't want to get into details here, but it's coming soon. And without a new economic model, we can't have a new social order anyway. So it's all part of one big puzzle, but I have to align everything with natural law if we want society and the world to operate in harmony and find that balance that we're supposed to be living in. And then we've got the Freedom Project 2020 website. Again, the tagline is "The time has come to restore individual sovereignty worldwide." I show how we do it on this website. There's 8 main sections of this website: the fake pandemic, terrain theory versus germ theory, all the warnings we've been warned about what's happening today for decades, the Great Reset and the 50-year plan for human enslavement, the perpetual enemies of humanity, how the banking system and government has colluded to take away our rights while gaslighting us into believing that we actually have rights because of this thing called democracy. It's all in here. My crash course in critical thinking is on here. The plan to free humanity, the steps we need to take to get there, and so everything here. And I love this quote from Marcus Garvey: "We are going to free ourselves from mental slavery. Because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. It's something that we all have to take personal responsibility in doing. And that's why the only New Year's resolution you need to make is to learn and understand to align with natural law, to reclaim your mind, to revitalize your body, to restore individual sovereignty. Mind is your only ruler, sovereign. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. All right, so again, everything is on here. I've spent thousands of hours of my life creating these websites, and nobody ever goes to them. It's the tree that fell in the woods that nobody heard. But all the answers, they're all right here. You've got all 8 sections right there. There's videos. There's different sections. And then there's my blog, Kaizen in the Pursuit of Truth. Everything will be up here. And I'm finally, now that my business is fully operational, I'm finally going to be moving into 2026, creating the content that I meant to create starting in 2022, almost, over 3 years ago now. 10-minute videos focusing on one topic. I'm going to take other long-form media, break it down, show you the highlights, show you the good part of the video, and show you the part that they're missing. Because what everyone's missing is they're not talking about natural law. Most people's solutions are fixing government. And that's never going to be the solution. Government can't be fixed. It's not our system to fix. It's their system that they're using to control us. So if we ever want to be free, we need to unite. We need to create our own system. We need to create that breakaway civilization and peacefully transition to it. That is how humanity restores individual sovereignty and dissolves the matrix system. And it all begins with this one New Year's resolution, which is learning about and aligning with natural law. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was very helpful to you. This is my life's work. This is what I'm going to continue to do until I die. Or until we finally take our power back. Because nothing else is going to suffice. We can't run away and hide in off-grid communities. They've got weapons that can wipe us out and vaporize us in an instant. You know that. We have to unite as one and dissolve the enemy. Because it's the enemy that's the danger. It's the system that is the danger to every single person in this world. Unless we dissolve the system, nobody in this world is safe. And that's the fact. I love you all. Thank you for watching this. Happy New Year on the Julian calendar. Hopefully we can figure out a way to keep time and balance with nature someday in the very near future. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful new year. 2026 isn't going to get any better in the system that we're in. So buckle up, but start doing your part to help those of us out who want to change the world to benefit everybody. Because if we're not united, we will continue to be divided, we will continue to be controlled, and we will continue to be abused. And I don't want that. For you, for myself, for anybody, for my dogs, for the children being born this year. I want a world of abundance and peace and harmony for everybody. And only we can create that. So, I've given you everything. It's all there. The last 18 years of my life has been working towards this point. And now I'm going to make shorter content video to direct people to that work. Because until people actually look at it and understand what's happening here, and that we truly do have the power, because we outnumber the predator-parasite class by over 1,000,000 to 1, by their own admission, we have all the power. We only need to realize it. So again, thank you, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye-bye.